Shock Treatment the movie is rated PG, but Shock Treatment Minute is rated F for
First.
We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the way we'll talk about adult content and use adult language. Consider yourselves warned.
Welcome to Shock Treatment Minute, the podcast where we discuss shock treatment 1 minute at a time in excruciating detail. I'm one of your hosts, Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Leandra.
And this is our inaugural episode, so we will be covering minute 1 of shock treatment.
Woohoo!
I know. I'm so excited. I really am. I'm so jazzed. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the movie before we go into summarizing it, since this is our very first episode.
That's fair.
So just so you guys know, this is going to be a 92-minute podcast because this minute is 92 minutes and a little bit of change. But it could have been a 94-minute podcast. Did you know that, Leandra?
No, I did not. I did see that there are kind of several different versions of this that have slightly different amounts of time that they take to get through, but I wasn't 100% sure about what they could have possibly taken away or added.
Well, I can answer that for you right now. So, the original cut of this movie was 94 minutes. Every home video edition that has ever been released has had some type of audio flaw. The VHS and beta had warbling during the overture and Farley's song that knocked the sound out of sync for a second. All DVD releases have a sound dropout before the last chorus of Denton, USA, and a chunk of the end credit overture is cut off to fade into the single version of shock treatment. Oh. So the original version, that whole overture plays over the credits and then shock treatment. So that's why it's a teeny bit longer and it's 94 instead of 92 minutes.
Very cool. Yeah, what I was looking at,
it's
all of this is very cool to the people who listen to Movie by Minute podcasts, I would assume.
That's fair. I was gratified if they were going to cut anything. I'm glad it was just a song playing over black screen credits.
Yeah. And the notes that I saw were kind of more vague than that. It was just that in cinema it was 94 minutes and 22 seconds, and then for home entertainment, at least the 2006 version was 88 minutes and 28 seconds. So, ooh.
88. Interesting. That must be without the credits.
It's gotta be. Although,
yeah.
If anybody has a copy at home that they're convinced is 88 minutes and 28 seconds long, or really any number that isn't our 92 and change, just let us know. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, for our purposes, we're using, I believe, a Blu-ray rip, or at least that's what I'm using. I have the DVD too. I'm actually comparing that because it's got one of the commentaries I'm using. I also own it on VHS, so at some point I'll have to pop that in and see if I can notice those warbling. Maybe I'll try and do that before we get to Farley's song. But yeah.
It's also available on YouTube for free. So if you were watching at home and you're like, I don't know how to see this, if you have the ability to listen to us, that probably means that you have access to YouTube. So if you look it up, you can watch right along.
Yes, but the version that we are covering for the purposes of this is going to be the Blu-ray, and I honestly don't think that's going to make a noticeable difference anyway. So, shock treatment.
Yes.
So it came out in 1981. Many people think of it as the sequel to Rocky Horror, but I think Richard O'Brien was the first person to call it an equal. Many have since, and he changed his mind about that later. Now he most recently has called it an abortion. So,
nice.
I know. I'm like, well, that's fine. He's been wrong about lots of things. But now it's referred to as an equal. Leandra, what is an equal?
An equal is a sequel that doesn't have an S at the front of it.
Yeah.
No, wait, it's a carnivorous plant.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, I think what was meant by that is that this is not, at least in my opinion, I don't know if you agree, this is not meant to take place in the same timeline as the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I don't think so.
Like, I don't think the Brad and Janet of this movie were in Frank's castle.
I would be surprised if if these were the same people from from that universe. It would be shocking to me.
Yeah. So I think what they mean by an equal is it's like a different timeline, kind of spiritual sister to the Rocky Horror Picture Show, not a spiritual sequel, but it's and it could theoretically be a sequel, of course, because Brad and Janet are married now, but I don't think that was the intent. However, of course, Rocky Horror Shows His Heels was the original script that Richard O'Brien approached Michael White with.
And then there was the Brad and Janet show,
Yeah. Well,
which was
so
like shortly after.
yeah, so Rocky Horror Shows His Heels was like a direct sequel. Everybody came back to life. Frank and Rocky are alive. So I was right that Rocky just crawled out of that pool. um, Brad and Dr. Scott are lovers, and Janet is pregnant with Frank's baby. In the words of Patricia Quinn on the Blu-ray commentary for Shock Treatment, I can't think of anything more horrific than pregnancy and babies to do with Transylvania. And honestly, I agree. I don't like that idea. Thoughts?
I definitely wouldn't want to watch that.
Yeah.
I feel like that would make me go, "Oh, no. No, thank you."
I think so. And I kind of get what he was going for with the whole like aliens like inseminating humans. That's an old trope, but I think it takes a lot of the fun and silliness and kind of forgivable bed trick of it all away from Frank and Janet's encounter, right? If she ends up
Yeah.
pregnant, I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable to think about. Jim Sharman did not want to do that though, so all right. Tim Curry, by almost every account, and I have read and seen interviews of many, said that Tim Curry did not want to reprise his role of Frank. My DVD insert stated that it was because he was approached for Frank and he said no, and then he was approached for Brad and Farley, and he said he didn't feel confident enough in his American accent, apparently. But Patricia Quinn on the audio commentary says that he was never offered she says that he told her at an event that he was never approached about any of the sequel projects.
Oh, wow.
Could that possibly be true?
I can't imagine that being the case unless there was some sort of major falling out, but I don't think there
Well,
was.
no, he was like, according to Patricia Quinn, he was like, I would have gladly done it, but no one ever asked me. That can't, I just don't think that could possibly be true. I mean,
No, I really don't think so.
and like, so Little Nell is doing the commentary with Patricia Quinn this time, and she pushed back on it. But Patricia was quite insistent. Take that as you will, but like I said, many, many other credible sources said that Tim Curry wasn't interested in playing Frank, or he didn't feel like that script was a good idea, and then didn't feel confident in his American accent. I mean, I saw Jim Sharman say that, and Richard Hartley, is that his name?
Richard Hartley did
Yeah.
music.
Yes, yeah. Richard Hartley also said that, I think. So those are the conflicting accounts, I guess. Do with that information what you will. Long story short, Rocky Horror Shows His Heels didn't happen. And then that's when the Brad and Janet show, which Leandra mentioned, was born. Basically, Richard O'Brien wanted to kind of rework it because he had songs that he had already written for Rocky Horror Shows His Heels. That is closer to what Shock Treatment ended up being. As you can probably guess from the title, it dealt quite a bit with TV.
Well, just quickly going back to Tim Curry, I just wanted to throw out there that he was on SNL in late 1981,
Mm-hmm.
and his monologue, and it was a different time. Everyone, it was a different time. We don't have to talk about the particulars of it, but Eddie Murphy uh, was a part of that monologue in a way that I don't think really flies super well for a an audience for today. But he
Didn't
was
go good.
talking about how there are roles that he wouldn't want to revisit, essentially, and I would assume that since he was referencing Frankenfurter in that, and he said that he was looking to do more masculine roles, that he would have been, if he had been offered any of the sequel sorts of stuff, he would have said no thank you.
That I mean, I should think so. I will say that I love Shock Treatment dearly, and I think it is for the best that Frank is not a part of it. Does that make
Uh,
sense?
it does.
Yeah.
I completely agree. If he was there, I feel like it would be too much like I don't want it to be a sequel. I want it to be its own
Mm-hmm.
thing.
I mean, yeah, and if it were to be a sequel, it would have to be a lot more similar in tone to what the original movie is, which, to be fair, from what I've read of Rocky Horror Shows His Heels, it is that. But I also don't particularly think that sounds good.
Appealing.
Yeah. I think that this is such a much fresher idea. I mean, really, really fresh. I'm sure we'll talk about that in future minutes, but ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and it's so aesthetically different. I think it I think it's for the best for the movie that it kind of grew away from Rocky in a way. Probably not for the best for its commercial success, but I don't know. I don't think Rocky Horror Shows Its Heels would have done any better, to be honest.
In several of the write ups that I've read about shock treatment, and in at least one interview, I think it was Lou Adler who brought up that they kind of made a fundamental mistake of trying to create a cult classic. You can't really do that. One just is, it develops on its own.
Yeah.
So they they were leaning into something, and like all audiences, people don't like to be told what they should like. So they went, nope.
Yeah, and that was Roger Ebert's main critique of it too. I remember a while ago watching his review of it. And I don't agree with it, obviously. They were very, very negative, and they were very like, how dare British people criticize America? Which is fair. Like, I love criticizing America angrily, but then a British person pops in, and I'm like, no, America's perfect. But
I, well, I don't have that problem.
no, it's just British people don't have the right to feel self righteous about anything. They come there and they're like, ew, Americans, they don't learn maths in school. You know?
It has been exactly 10 minutes, and we are getting into accent work.
You're so welcome. I mean, if any movie we're going to talk about accent work, it is this movie full of people doing American accents where
That
it's
is
not
so
their native
true.
one. And honestly, most of the time, quite well. There are very few noticeable slips. Anyway, all this to say, the Brad and Janet show was a lot more similar to this. They were working on it. Oh, and actually, another reason that I think it officially can be considered an equal and not a sequel is that this movie was to take place in Denton, Texas, and was going to be filmed there. As
It
we
sure
and
was.
as we know from Rocky Horror, Denton, Texas is not the Denton of that movie.
And I know that we'll talk about this later on, but for reasons that will be discussed later, this film wasn't filmed on location.
Oh yeah. Well, so yeah, that's basically what I was building to. So, but yeah, we can talk about it later, but as Leandra says, it was not filmed there after all, and a few major changes to the script had to happen to fit it
One or
into its
two,
new home.
or
Yeah,
three,
yeah,
or
or
four.
but I actually I think I haven't. Is there like a copy of the Brad and Janet show floating around that anyone's ever gotten a hold of? If there is, I have not seen it.
I have a distinct memory of reading it, but that could be a complete like hallucination on my part.
Well, I hope it's not. I would love to read it, but I have not at this time read it. And what I've read of it, it sounds like it was not too far off of where we arrived with shock treatment.
That at least from what I remember sounds accurate, but it could also have been fanfic. Like
Yeah.
the internet's a weird fucking place. There are a lot of things that you can read and go,
And
hmm.
you had a very active Life on Live journal at one point. So,
Oh my goodness, I really did. Yeah.
what was your user? Oh, I can't ask that.
You can ask it, I just won't tell
Yeah,
you.
I forgot that other people are listening.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, not actually, but they could. They have the ability to. Anyway,
Thank Thankfully, even if you were to find my live journal, I've locked down all of the extremely cringy stuff. The only thing that you'll find now is I used to write like very quick bits of fiction just off of a prompt, and I'd give myself an hour and drop it in live journal because where else would I put that? So, if you want to read unedited bad fiction,
I do. Actually,
okay.
I really, really do.
Oh no, I don't think you do, but I can send anybody who emails us, it's still going to be at rockyhorrorminute@gmail.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're not changing the email. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you email me at rockyhorrorminute@gmail.com, I will gladly, absolutely send you my live journal handle and you can really feast on that.
All right, I have emailed you.
Oh no.
Yeah. All right. So now that I've got that little bit of business out of the way, yeah, I'll read what is on my DVD booklet because I think that that sums it up pretty well and leaves it vague enough for time being. But they said, according to O'Brien, so this is a quote from Richard O'Brien. When we initially conceived Shock Treatment, Brad and Janet's home was a real place. Everything was real. The film was set in an American suburb, and we were going to shoot as much as we could on location in the USA. But then the Screen Actors Strike intervened, and it turned out to be a stroke of good luck. We had to film the picture in England, and since we couldn't recreate the American locations there, the movie had to be shot in a studio. It was then that we came up with the idea of setting the whole production inside a TV studio and making the entire film look like it was shot off a television soundstage.
The fact that this came out in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
is just stunning.
I mean,
Like,
say what you will about Shock Treatment. This is not a contrived movie. This is a truly original film in a lot of ways.
it really is. And it I feel like there were a lot of these in the 80s. Science fiction went from having almost a cutesy sort of hopefulness
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways to you have things like Videodrome and Lawnmower Man
Mm-hmm.
and things that kind of depict technology in this incredibly
Yeah.
bleak and terrifying sort of way. And I feel like it fits kind of into that into the fabric of that sort of
Yeah, like a dystopian
exactly.
movement. Yeah. 100%. And we'll get into the reasons later, but this is a prescient film in a lot of ways that are it's depressing to watch now. Yeah, because in some ways I feel like our society has gone even past this. But
Yeah, it's no longer biting satire so much as, yep, that's kind of what that's like, actually.
I think it was a creative way to handle the problem, and I think it ended up really working for Richard O'Brien's concept.
I agree.
And he agrees too. He said he was frightened the strike was going to finish too soon and they'd have to go back to their original conception. He said, um, I understand. Like it's interesting. I think the movie would have been a lot less unique, obviously, if they had not done it this way. So really, really creative approach to that problem. That's just I wanted to give a little intro on the movie before we dive into it.
Absolutely. I think that it's important to contextualize like why why things might not make as much sense, or at least in the same way that Rocky made kind of stylistic sense. Um, I I think that yet again this is saved by Brian Thompson. The set design is honestly just beautiful. There's always something for your eyes to rest upon, even in this first minute.
And Sue Blaine too. I mean, this is I one thing I guarantee I'm going to one point I guarantee I'm going to hit over and over again in this podcast is visually this movie is unbelievably stunning to me. And
Agreed.
that's mostly due to Brian Thompson and Sue Blaine. I mean, this is one of the number one movies that I used to turn on and just play like on loop all day just because it was like comforting to because I found the visuals so pleasing. So, like I would have it on with the sound off in my apartment all the time back in the day. That's just my feelings on it.
So you've talked about how you liked watching it even with the sound off in your apartment. What was your first experience
Mhm.
watching this?
Well, it was with you, Leandra. It
It
had
was.
to be you, wonderful you. Yes. The first time I saw this movie was, I want to say 2017. It might have been early 2018. But I had pretty recently joined my Rocky cast, the Sonic Transducers, and we had a cast movie night to watch Shock Treatment at just a cast member's apartment. Leandra was there providing amazing callbacks to it, which was a huge enhancer of the experience, to be sure. We all had a great time. I enjoyed the movie. Like I said, visually I thought it was beautiful, but I found it a little hard to follow. But I enjoyed every second. I loved the music, but as I was driving home, I remember I just couldn't get it out of my brain. I like played the soundtrack even on the way home from that, and then it just really colonized my brain. And just for days, I was listening to the soundtrack. I rewatched the movie a couple of times and I pieced together the plot. So I did not fully follow the plot on my first watch for sure, but I loved it instantly. What about you?
My first experience with shock treatment comes from I was in Big Lots, which if you if you are not from the US or if you've never heard of this store, it's like this big kind of discount store. It's full of a lot of weird things that are marked down, at least to some degree. There's nothing wrong with any of the things there. It's just like kind of an odd place. But I walked past a DVD area, and for $5 they had a DVD of Shock Treatment, and I was like, "Oh wow, for $5 I can get the sequel to the Rocky Horror Picture Show? That sounds great." So I got it and rushed home and put it in the DVD player and pressed play, and in silence started watching it. I got maybe 20 minutes in before I was like, I'm turning this off. This is not for me. I don't fucking get this. And then I was just like, I don't need to know how this ends. This was like not my bag, baby. And then I went to a Rocky Horror convention and they were doing a shadow cast of it. One of my friends was like, we're gonna go see the shadow cast of Shock Treatment. And I went, great. I think I'm going to hang out in the room or something. I just don't know that that's for me. And she said, I wasn't asking. We're going now. And I was like, shit, okay. So I sat there. I was fully expecting to continue to not enjoy this experience because it didn't strike fancy with me at first. Something about watching it with callbacks and with the live shadow cast really brought it to life for me and made it just something so fun and so irreverent. And I think that in order for me to love Shock Treatment as much as I do, I also have to hate it in a way that Kelly doesn't. It's a weird line to walk.
I understand the movie has problems. For example, like I said, I failed to follow it the first time I watched it. So I think it failed in its, you know, maybe in the case of this film, maybe not its primary objective, but a major objective of it was to have me understand the plot, and it failed there. But even though it has problems, I just think it is a true artistic triumph. That's the only way I can put it, really. It's such an amazing and, like, in many ways beautifully executed thing.
And that's why when we had a bunch of new cast members, it's like we should have a movie night where we watch Shock Treatment together because if you watch this by yourself, you're not going to like it. Or if you
Right.
do, you're
And
probably a serial killer.
how old were you when you had the Big Lots experience?
I was in my 20s.
Okay.
I don't know specifically when. It's not when dinosaurs roamed the earth though, Kelly.
No, no. I was just thinking because depending on like my age and also what I was expecting going in, I think that would have really colored my enjoyment of the movie. So I can definitely understand how without any context or anything like that, just being like, "Ooh, the Rocky Horror sequel, this would be quite a shock," you know?
It was a letdown that first time because I had certainly heard about it and I'd heard about it from people who really liked it. And they're like, it's so good. It's like really good. It's better than Rocky. And I was expecting to be wowed by this. That was also, I want to say, the same day that I tried to get through Farce of the Penguins, and that was a bad day for cinema in my house because Farce
The
of the
hell is
Penguins fucking sucked.
what the fuck is Farce of the Penguins?
I'm so glad you asked.
Is it a parody of March of the Penguins?
Yep.
Oh, and what a rich vein to mine for comedy. Yeah,
Bob
what a.
Saget was one of the voices.
So was it? You said it was not good.
It was very not good.
I see.
That was another one that I was like, I turn this off now. And
Yeah.
and maybe I just throw out my TV.
How far did you get into the movie the first time before you turned it off?
Farce of the Penguins?
Yeah. Yeah, I need to know if you got to the first song. No, shock treatment, of course.
I think I got through Bitchin' in the Kitchen.
Okay.
And then I was like, this is fine to be turned off now.
Yeah, and so you didn't even get to see like Cosmo and Nation. That might have appealed to somebody watching for Rocky Horror reasons.
If I had stuck around but 30 seconds later to see that Rick Mayall was in there, I would have given it a chance because growing up, one of my favorite movies was Drop Dead Fred, and he was, of course, the titular character.
Yeah, I still need to watch that. Rip Rick Mail.
Yeah. So yeah, that is my experience with Shock Treatment for the first time. I really only watched it maybe 10 years before you. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I first watched it when I was 26.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't know that I would ever be revisiting this. So I didn't go like, oh, I've got to put it in my calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I only remember because it was right after I joined the Rocky cast, and I remember what year I did that. Okay, well,
Oh, that's our show.
yeah, well, I guess this would be a good time to to start the recap.
Oh, the recap of this film?
Yes, well, just not the whole film, just
Oh,
the 1 minute.
what about Farce of the Penguins? When are we going to do that one?
Oh, Farce of the Penguins minute. I can't
F
believe I never heard
for
of this.
farce.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
So, we begin with the 20th Century Fox logo, with spotlights roaming, and the Fox theme, you know, the bum bum, bum bum, ba-da-da-da-da, bum, bum ba-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but not all of it, just to that point. And after the drums stop, the screen fades out and then fades up into a view of a picture of a seated person with slicked back hair wearing a white suit jacket and a gigantic red carnation pinned to their lapel, smoking a cigar held in their right hand. You see the smoke, it's not going anywhere, so we know that this is just a still frame. At the bottom of the screen, two blue lines stretch out from the left hand side and from the right hand side of the screen, and moving left in all caps and in the same blue color, it says a Lou Adler, Michael White production of a musical by Richard O'Brien. And it's running like a news ticker. While this is happening, we hear wind blowing and whistling along with thunder. The name Cliff DeYoung appears in the ticker. A voiceover with a southern twang says, Once upon a time in a town, and the name zaps out and is replaced with Jessica Harper, not far from yours. That name also disappears and is replaced with Patricia Quinn, Richard O'Brien. There lived a real fast guy. The name switches to Charles Gray. His life was fast. And the name switched to Nell Campbell and Ruby Wax. His friends were fast. Even his, Barry Humphries is the next name that pops up. Food was fast, but he was still. And then it just switches to the word music, and the voiceover continues, not satisfied. Then music is replaced with Richard Hartley, Richard O'Brien, and the voiceover continues with, he wanted to share his fast philosophy with. Then books and lyrics is the next set of words that pops up, and it says someone else. And then the last words that we see appear are is the name Richard O'Brien, and that is the first minute.
Amazing.
I love this voiceover. It is such a weird choice, but it
Mm-hmm.
I do I do think that this is one of my favorite things about shock treatment.
Oh, wow. I like it. I don't know if I like it that much, but I do love the voiceover.
It's just so goofy. The
Yeah.
fact that they went, okay, we got to establish that this is Texas. How can we do that? Are we going to do it by like saying that we're in Texas? No. Are we going to do it by like having other people have a southern accent? No. Let's have a voiceover of a character that we won't ever see or interact with, and they will just be like this Greek chorus and this like a prologue, and they're just going to come in and be like, a long time ago, some stuff happened, and everything that you're about to see is that. Oh, I just love it. I don't know.
Yeah. And no, it believe me, I love it too. Um there's just so much to love about the movie, I guess. But it yeah, it It is. I, I don't. It's not supposed to map to anybody in the movie for sure, right?
No, I really don't think so. I
Yeah.
This voiceover is even it's completely uncredited.
Yeah, I don't know why it's not credited, but I did look around and TV tropes with no source listed that Christopher Malcolm, who is gonna play a character in the movie coming up, did the voiceover, and it sounds like it could be him, but like I said, there's no source for that. But I also couldn't find anything contradicting it, so maybe Christopher Malcolm. Or was it you, listener? Write in and let us know if you were the voice.
And I have some feelers into a couple of people in the Rocky Horror and like shock treatment larger community who might be able to point me to an original source, or at least they could be like, I know that it was Christopher Malcolm because I went to school with his daughter's best friend or something. I'll take anything at this point.
Mm,
But right now it's a mystery. Hopefully, one of very few.
hopefully, but probably not. Lot less available on this movie compared to Rocky Horror.
Yeah. So we have a lot of names that we've just seen for the first time in this film, but not the first time that we've seen them in the kind of Rocky Horror greater cinematic universe. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the new faces to this universe, but largely, if you want a deeper dive into, for instance, everything that you might want to know about Richard O'Brien, then I strongly encourage you to listen to minutes 1 through 100 of Rocky Horror Minute. But the new names that I want to just give a quick thing to share with you about are Cliff DeYoung and Jessica Harper. They are names that we're going to be bringing up a whole lot in the coming minutes. And the thing that I want to share this time is that they met in a production of the musical Hair.
A Rocky Horror tradition, apparently.
It really is. For longtime listeners with us, you'll know that so many different people that are associated with the Rocky Horror Picture Show all met while they were doing a production of Hair. This wasn't the same
Not the same
production,
one.
no.
Yeah,
But
that would be crazy.
God, that would be absolutely wild if they were
Like a
like,
ships
just
in the night
kidding.
moment.
I I saw that you did Rocky and that was great and there wasn't any space for me, but I really want to be involved in this one. Like I don't think that's what happened. I know
No.
that that's not what happened because it wasn't the same production. And then we have Barry Humphries, and that's a name that you may not know super well, but you've probably heard the name that he's best known by, and that is Dame Edna, a like very very well known, not quite drag queen. I think that the it was it
I think crossdresser is
yeah,
honestly the appropriate term here, or transvestite at the time was not. It's kind of considered offensive now, but at the time, I think it was just the term that they used.
maybe even female impersonator,
Oh, yeah, that for sure.
but but Dame Edna, if you haven't heard about this, your parents definitely have, because Dame Edna was like a big comedian, all through the I'd say 70s and 80s. And then the final name that is new to us is Ruby Wax. And Kelly is going to be talking a whole lot about how cool Ruby is, But for those of you who need a Star Wars tie-in, Ruby Wax is in Andor.
I
So,
actually have a pretty major Star Wars tie-in in a future minute.
ooh, that's exciting.
Tease. Um, but yes, Ruby Wax is also legendary. If you have not heard of her, you are not British, probably, or you're very young.
Or both.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Petra, you've never heard of Ruby Wax. You can put your hand down.
Honestly, Petra will surprise you sometimes with the references. They know. Do you have any other notes about the minute itself?
I don't. I have some callbacks though.
I don't know this one for sure, but I have one that I think is probably pretty likely.
All right, share your callback.
Dare I say, Lou's got an Adler?
I'll allow it this time.
Sustained. But I don't know if that's one people do, but well, they do it for Rocky. It's a little different because he comes before Richard Goldstone or not Richard. He comes before John Goldstone in this, but still, that's what I would do anyway.
And my opinion with regards to callbacks for shock treatment, and there are plenty of people out there who I'm sure disagree.
I'm gearing up to disagree.
If you if you are doing callbacks for shock treatment minute, no, no, take two. If you're doing callbacks for shock treatment, not our
live shadow,
podcast.
live shadowcast shock treatment minute.
Oh my god, please do.
Yeah.
If you're doing any callbacks while watching shock treatment and they make you happy, then that's great. Do them. I
Okay.
don't know that I don't know that there are enough people out there that know callbacks to shock treatment that if you just start screaming stuff at the screen, you're going to have an oversaturation of callbacks.
It's true. That is an advantage shock treatment has over Rocky.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's the only one I could think of, though.
Okay. So these callbacks are ones that I've heard or I've seen online. I used the Wayback Machine to locate an audience participation script on a now defunct shock treatment fan website. So some of these are really fun and others
You backed that up,
I
right?
did. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
I was like, do not let that be lost to time.
No,
I'll put it on my hard drive. Okay, good.
I put it in a Google Doc.
Google Doc, put it in a Google Doc.
To save for the rest of time. Okay.
Okay, we're normal.
Yeah. So my callbacks. The movie opens with the 20th Century Fox logo. You can go, I don't want to see Star Wars again, or 20th Century Fox again.
Oh, yeah.
And the callback to that callback is, I'm still sore from the last one. When the logo disappears, there's the ones just still of who we will later find out is this character named Farley, and he's smoking. And before the voiceover happens, you can go, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, God said, let there be a sequel. And there was a sequel. And this is it.
I like that.
And then right before the voiceover starts, you can say, ladies and gentlemen, the narrator for the Dukes of Hazzard.
That is what it reminds me of.
Or you can say, hello, I'm Jim Kramer with the stock report. And that's because the scrawling credits, they look kind of like a news ticker or a stock report. So that's kind of fun. And then when the narrator says, once upon a time, You say, where? And then he says, in a town. And then you say, where? And then he says, not far from yours. And you shout, too close. And then he says, there lived a real fast guy. And you say, just ask his girlfriend. Or Usain Bolt. His life was fast. And then you go, his hands were fast. His friends were fast. His fucks were fast. Even his food was fast. And then to that you go, even his orgasms were fast. But he was still not satisfied. And then you say, and neither was his girlfriend. And then he says he wanted to share his fast philosophy with someone else. And you say, Brad. And then there is nice payoff to saying Brad with the first callback of the next minute. But those are all of the callbacks I know, which I guess means we're going to wrap this one up, but we're doing it in a slightly different way. So, Kelly, I just have one final question for you.
What?
Does this bird belong to you? My cats. Well, I feel so smug knowing that I've introduced to you not just shock treatment, but also, didn't I introduce you to Phantom of the Paradise?
Leandra,
Another film that you now love.
several of my
Yeah.
favorite movies, every funny bit I've ever done, I just take these things from you. It's it's all coming from Leandra. I'm just a parasite.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Wait, why does my parasite have big tits?
Because it's full of your blood. I don't know. Don't say that.
Ugh.
Don't put that. Don't put
Ah,
that. While
I'm keeping
I
this
was
in.
picturing myself as a big titty tick. And then I got caught up
No.
imagining how many tits a tick would have. Like, would it be 2 like a human, or would it be like 6 or 8 like a dog?
I hate this so much.
Yeah, well.
Now there's porn of it. Thanks, Kelly.
Shout out to Mashia, our porn correspondent.
Pornespondent.